A lot of times we have a tendency to fight for our kids or to fight for someone else without even noticing the ways that we need to fight for ourselves. The parenting part of being a mom can feel heavy, and sometimes when we say it out loud, it's followed by a lingering feeling of guilt. Isn't being a mom supposed to be fulfilling? As we peel back the layers of stress, overwhelm, disappointment, and fear, we begin to recognize the pieces to the puzzle of a bigger picture. Hello, and welcome to Mom's Way to Wellness. If you are a mom who feels lonely, unseen, and overwhelmed with the demands of motherhood, you are in the right place. I am your host, Aida Maravillas. I help overwhelmed moms transform their challenges into mental health and generational well-being as we talk about the struggles of motherhood, parenting, and mental health through a lens of faith. I offer resources and guidance to help you work through the challenges that are impacting your relationship with yourself and with others. Let's get into today's episode. The topic today is why it's important to name how we feel. I've been talking about some different mental health topics and how they affect us as moms and how they affect our kids. We can know the signs of stress, anxiety, and depression and find ourselves asking, now what? What's important about knowing this information? These topics might seem like they're trending or being talked about a lot these days, and that's because the rates of anxiety and depression have been on the rise. But it's one thing to just know that these rates are high, and it's another thing when we are struggling, or when we know someone who's struggling, or when our kids are struggling. That's when topics like this feel heavier. They hit us in a different way. For moms, sometimes the hardest part is watching our kids experience difficult emotions and the way it can trigger our own childhood pain or the way it triggers the part of us that wants to protect them from having to endure something that is hard. A lot of times we have a tendency to fight for our kids or to fight for someone else without even noticing the ways that we need to fight for ourselves. We focus on how others are going through hard times and minimize or ignore what we may be going through. But it's important to understand and acknowledge that what we are going through is important. It matters because being able to identify a concern is a starting point and not the place where we have to stay stuck. Today, we're going to talk about why it's important to name our emotions or stressors for what they are and what the result can be for doing so. Because understanding what is going on inside of us is such an important part of our healing journey. We can start to tackle a problem when we know what it is and name it. The parenting part of being a mom can feel heavy, and sometimes when we say it out loud, it's followed by a lingering feeling of guilt. Isn't being a mom supposed to be fulfilling? Where is the joy when things feel overwhelming? Why do some things feel so hard? When the expectation has been set and the bar is high, we may be overlooking where we're at. The more we keep on pushing and avoiding the hard parts of our experience, the more our body will speak to us in ways that reveal just how challenging things may actually be. It shows up to tell us something. The worry, the trouble sleeping, the overthinking, the trouble concentrating, the lack of motivation, the headaches, the body aches, and sometimes new health issues are the ways our body speaks to us. We feel the symptoms, the invisible baggage we carry into the day as we push through. And no matter how much we avoid naming what these symptoms represent, staying silent does not make them go away. We worry about a lot of things during different seasons of parenting. We wonder if we're doing a good job, if we're living up to an idea that we have about what life is supposed to look like, and if we're doing things the right way, the quote-unquote right way that we think things need to be done in. And when life doesn't look like that idea we've been holding on to, we can have a hard time thinking that things will ever get better. But whenever I have walked a mom through the process of hard work, the discomfort of naming the things that are hard, to say it out loud, we uncover something amazing. As we peel back the layers of stress, overwhelm, disappointment, and fear, we begin to recognize the pieces to the puzzle of a bigger picture. We start to put the pieces together, and it starts to be a more clear picture. Naming what is present beneath the surface becomes our strength. It provides the margin we need to acknowledge there are things we can't control. The space that acknowledges that everything isn't okay, but naming the feelings start to take away the power that the unnamed feelings hold over us. I've seen other moms begin to feel better when they put a name to what is going on. It opens us up to increased self-awareness. And when we are able to do that, there is a sense of freedom that follows. Naming what it is we are feeling helps us understand our needs and be able to better express them to our support system. It helps us to communicate. It helps us to reframe our inner voice. When we name the symptoms of stress, anxiety, depression, or any other things those feelings represent, they become the way we are feeling rather than a new identity to carry. Our emotions are not who we are. They are a part of a way to express how we feel when we encounter different things. And those things aren't necessarily always heavy. Sometimes they are mixed with things that are good, that are full of joy, and that feel light. Depending on what age and stage of parenting we are in, we can begin to recognize what is aligned with the context of expected and unexpected situations, rather than taking the behavior of our kids as a personal attack. The avoidance of naming things may be the very thing that makes room for fear to grow. We might think that naming something will give it more power over us, but I have seen the opposite. The more I talk with other moms about the hard stuff, a shift starts to happen, and I see women take their power and authority back. Watching a mom find her strength and courage to talk about the hard parts of her story, it's just helped her reframe where she's at and where she's been. And when we recognize the hard parts of our story, it helps us to shape us. It helps us to see that it's part of a bigger picture and not the final chapter. Naming how we feel gives us permission to understand what something is, to recognize it, to be able to explain it to others, and to work through it. It's like pruning away the dead parts of the flowers in a garden, or being able to identify the weeds that are stealing the nutrients from the soil and slowing down the growth before pulling them out. We can't help nourish new growth if we aren't able to do the hard work and prune away what isn't healthy and the good parts of our soil. It reminds me of how Adam's responsibilities in the garden were to work the garden and then to name the animals God had created. There was purpose in naming what had been created. There was a purpose in being placed in a garden, and there is purpose in the hard parts of our story. Naming the parts of our story that are hard is a lot like the work of pruning or weeding in a garden. It allows us to recognize what something is, to learn more about why it's there, and to grow in our understanding of it in order to work through it. In the garden, the work cultivates the soil. In our lives, the work cultivates us. And our relationship with ourselves and our relationship with others improve when the parts of us that need attention start to get what they need. The takeaway from today is an understanding of why it's important to name how we feel and how it may be a first step in taking back our power or authority. As I've reflected on this idea, I have some questions that I keep coming back to that I'm going to share. It's another tool to help our perspective as we look at ourselves and how important it is to consider what God can do in the presence of anxiety, stress, fear, depression, and every other emotion that was intentionally designed within us. Each question actually comes from a scripture that speaks to how God's character reflects his willingness to be with us in the hard parts of our stories. He never expected us to do it on our own, but somehow we tend to do it alone as we isolate, push away, or keep on fighting within ourselves. The first question: what if naming something challenging doesn't give it more power, but allows us to call it out, to recognize it, and to understand why it is showing up in our life? In Genesis 1, God spoke things into existence and named them. He named the light day and the dark night. He named every part of creation and then passed on the authority to Adam to name parts of creation. The second question: when we find ourselves asking God, why me? What if we asked him how he is with us and how he wants to comfort us? Psalm 23:4 says, "Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me." So he's with us, even in the hard places. He's comforting us, even when things are difficult. The third question: when we hold on to the burdens that feel heavy, what if God actually wants us to bring our burdens to him? 1 Peter 5:7 says, "Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you." How can we cast our cares upon him without naming them, without acknowledging them, without speaking them out loud? Question 4: what if healing is a process of surrendering our fears to God on a daily basis, rather than him taking away all of our fears at once? Lamentations 3:22-23 reads, "The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness." I love the idea of his mercies being new every day. The permission we have to bring our cares to him every day. And the last question: what if we trusted God for his strength rather than relying on our own? Psalms 3, verses 5-6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight." There's something about this verse that I do want to share a short story about. Years ago, my husband and I traveled to the Grand Canyon with a group of friends. We hiked to the bottom of the canyon, spent the night, and hiked back to the top the next day. This was one of the most physically challenging activities I have ever completed. We all walked at different paces, and we felt the weight of the walk in different ways. The path was actually a series of switchbacks. Because of the incline of the canyon, the path could not be straight all the way through. Parts of the path were straight for a while, but then we had to turn and follow the way it switched back. Even though we knew we were going from point A to point B, it wasn't safe, and it just wasn't possible to have a straight point from A to B without the switchbacks. Even though we are trying to trust God during a challenging part of our path, and we want to go directly from point A to point B in the straightest, fastest, easiest path, it's important for us to acknowledge that a path that is straight may not be the best thing for us. There may be a bigger picture coming together that we can't understand from our vantage point. I hope that these questions will help you consider how God's way of working through our circumstances may look a lot different than we would like. And remember, that when we name the things that are hard, it helps us understand what's going on within us, what's going on around us, and helps us to bring those things to God that feel too heavy for us to carry on our own. Because guess what? We were never meant to carry them on our own. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Please subscribe and leave a review. This will help others find the show. If you would like to receive additional resources on motherhood and wellness, you can join my community by subscribing to my email list at aidamaravillas.com. Remember, wellness is possible one step at a time.